I killed one with a knife. Killed the other one with a knife. Oh!
Hi, I'm Dr. Alok88. Welcome to my first tips and tricks video of how to become a master of the throwing knife. I've been using weighted throwing knives for years, and I wanted to give some tips and tricks on how to improve your throwing knife abilities. The weighted throwing knife is probably the most fun power melee we have in the hunter class. It's the last one-hit kill melee we have in the game. Today, we're going to break down my loadout, stats, and techniques on how to use weighted throwing knives effectively.
As far as stat distribution, I typically run 100 mobility, as this is the most important stat on a hunter, as it is linked to your dodge timer. Your dodge is going to be very important in having your weighted throwing knife up as much as possible. Strength is not necessarily as important as your dodge, but you can spec into it to have your weighted throwing knife up as much as possible. Having 100 strength will result in a melee ability cooldown timer of 42 seconds. As we look at the gunslinger subclass, as far as abilities, aspects, and fragments to run, it's very important to run Gambler's Dodge because dodging your enemy refunds your weighted throwing knife. Also, as aspects go, we need to run Knock 'em Down, which, while radiant, final blows with your throwing knife refunds the throwing knife. And if we couple that with Ember of Torches, power melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. This is important in making a loop for refunding your throwing knife after a kill. So these are the most important aspects and fragments and abilities to run. As far as exotic armor pieces, I typically do not run a specific armor piece synergizing well with weighted throwing knives. I'm typically running stompies, as I'm an addict for stompies, but if you are wanting to run an exotic that will synergize well with weighted throwing knives, as a beginner, I would recommend using a Ophidia Spade, as this gives you 2 throwing knives to practice with in the crucible. A fun exotic to use is Athra's Embrace, which actually gives your weighted throwing knife a second bounce, and after the second bounce it gives it supercharged aim assist, which can make for some very hilarious clips. Another unknown or not well known exotic piece that you can synergize with is Assassin's Cow, as it states that power melee kills grant you invisibility and healing. So this can be very fun and throw off your enemy.
The weighted throwing knife is considered a projectile. Therefore, it has travel time and actually arcs over long distances. Typically from 5 meters all the way up to 30 meters. It's pretty easy to just aim for the head and you'll typically get a crit. Where we start to struggle is around 35 meters. It's where we have to aim slightly above the head. And the arc starts to drastically change as we go to 40 meters and even up to 50 meters.
My philosophy with the weighted throwing knife is that I treat it like a third one-hit kill weapon, like a long-range slug shotgun, if you will. You can use any weapons or style of gameplay with the throwing knife, but I typically use it when I use a sniper along with a hand cannon.
Once you're out of sniper ammo, you're typically left with your hand cannon to deal with medium to long range targets, which leaves you vulnerable to short range weapons such as shotguns, fusion rifles, SMGs, and sidearms. The good thing about using a weighted throwing knife is it helps cover those engagements without putting you at risk. A lot of the close range primary weapons that have TTK ranges from 0.67 seconds to 0.73 seconds, which typically more forgiving and faster than your hand cannon at 0.88 second TTK. So we can abuse the weighted throwing knife to sometimes prime the enemy with a body shot from the way of the throwing knife, which typically does about 147 damage, and finish off with a hand cannon with either a body shot or a crit, or just flat out disrespect the enemy with a knife to the face. Important concepts to remember about throwing knives, again, they are physical projectiles with travel time and also have a 0.5 second animation before actually throwing the knife. With this information, it's important to always lead your reticle ahead of the target while you're moving in order to time the travel distance. It's also important to pay close to cover and start the animation prior to peeking the corner, which can lead to some very fast kills with minimal exposure. One could also call this peek shooting with a knife. It's always important to take cover on your left side, as your character model in the game is throwing the knife with the right arm. While having the cover or wall on the left side of your character, this minimizes your body exposure to take damage, which if the cover is on the right side, you actually have to peek further out in order to clear the wall, therefore exposing your body even more. Probably one of the hardest concepts to grasp is anticipation of the enemy movement and reading your radar. Again, given that it's a physical projectile with travel time, Destiny 2 is a very fast-paced game and really important trying to read your opponent and knowing what you're going to do next. For example, in Trials, if I'm playing a Titan that slides around corners and is very aggressive, and I see on the radar that he's pushing, I can anticipate him sliding out and making the right adjustment for my throwing knife kill. These are often risky plays, but very rewarding. Here are some examples.
Oh, I got him. Both. I'm one.
After the butchery of aerial gameplay, weighted throwing knives are one of the most consistent weapons in the air. For example, if you weaken a Titan, then he goes to pop a barricade. It's very easy to jump over the barricade and finish him off with a throwing knife with very good accuracy in the air. Something to also consider is overshields and damage resistance. The damage from the weighted throwing knife to the head is about 212 HP. Typically, Guardians with max resilience are around 201 HP. A Titan using a rally barricade with Bastion gives an overshield of an extra 60 HP and 100 HP to surrounding Guardians. Therefore, it pushes the total HP up to about 261. Therefore, you will not be able to one-hit crit with a weighted throwing knife at any resilience on a Titan. Another example is Stag Rift with Warlock. When they use a Rift, it gives them about 2 times damage resistance buff, which equates to about 5% damage resistance. You'll be able to one-hit crit Guardians up to 6 resilience in the Stag Rift. Anything above 7 resilience will survive. In conclusion, we've discussed proper stats and subclass loadouts for weighted throwing knives, builds, exotic selection, PvP strategy with weighted throwing knives, which include reticle placement, anticipation of enemy movement, aerial gameplay, and resilience checks with damage resistance. Now get out there in the crucible and start practicing and make those PvP sweats rage quit.
I'm behind. Oh. Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh my god. Oh. One more. Come on, come on. 3. Let's go, let's go. Got one. Bust. It didn't pop. Yeah. Fuck you.
I stream on Twitch and upload on Facebook Gaming.